Sipahi, Persian, Sipahi, Ottoman Turkish, Sipahi, Turkish pronunciation, Sipahi, also transliterated as Sipahi, Sipahi, and Spak, traditionally rendered as Beyi or Spahi in Albanian and Romanian, in Greek and Spahia, Cyrillic, in Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, Bulgarian and Macedonian, was the name of several Ottoman cavalry corps. It was the title given to several cavalry units serving in the French and Italian colonial armies during the 19th and 20th centuries. The name is Persian and derives from the Persian, sepa, meaning army, but originally meant cavalry derived from ispa, horse, with the compound name standing for a horseman, as does the English term Sipahi. Description: Sipahi refers to all freeborn Ottoman Turkish mounted troops other than anks and tribal horsemen in Ottoman army. The word was used almost synonymously with cavalry. The Sipahis formed two distinct types of cavalry: feudal-like, provincial timarlı Sipahi, timariots, which consisted most of the Ottoman army, and salaried, regular kapıkulu Sipahi, Sipahi of the Porte, which consisted cavalry part of the Ottoman household troops. According to some historians, the explanation of the Sipahi system, at the height of the Ottoman Empire, Sülleyman's reign, the flexibility of the federal dictatorship, where the Sultan was supreme, the prefecture system was genius and merit-based, the provincial governors, or beys, were rotated every few years, preventing land inheritance. The provinces, or sanjaks, were not all equal since Anatolia, Balkans, and Greece were mostly Turkish, and other areas of the empire were more flexible, adhering, somewhat, to local traditions. The intertwinement of land, military, politics, economics and religion was a way of life. The timar system, where the Sultan owned all land but individual plots of land, came with residential rights. The Ottoman people had rights to the land, but the Sipahi, a unique kind of military aristocracy and cavalry portion of the military, also lived on the land with the farmers, 90% of the population, and collected tax revenues, usually in kind, to subsidize the costs of training and equipping the small army, dedicated to serving the Sultan. The Sipahi did not inherit anything, preventing power centers from growing and threatening the supreme power structure. The locals on the Timar used the land and all it produced. Timarlı Sipahi, timariot, was the holder of a fief of land, timar, granted directly by the Ottoman Sultan or with his official permission by Balubs. He was entitled to all the income from that land, in return for military service. The peasants on the land were subsequently attached thereto. Timarlı Sipahi's status resembled that of the knights of medieval Europe. Unlike medieval knights, they weren't legally owners of their fiefs. The right to govern and collect taxes in a timar fief was merely given to a timarlı Sipahi by Ottoman state. And in return, Mali Sipahis were responsible for security of the people in their timar, enlisting and training Gebelu soldiers for the army. A timar was the smallest unit of land held by a Sipahi, providing a yearly revenue of no more than 20,000 aks, which was between 2 and 4 times what a teacher earned. As I omit, was a larger unit of land, yielding up to 100,000 aks, and was owned by Sipahis of officer rank. Ahaz, was the largest unit of land, giving revenues of more than 100,000 aks, and was only held by the highest-ranking members of the military. A timar Sipahi was obliged to provide the army with up to 5 retainers, Gebelu, as I omit Sipahi with up to 20, and Ahaz Sipahi with far more than 20. Gebelu means armed or armored, and those retainers, Gebelu, expected to be mounted and fully equipped. As Sipahi themselves, they were usually sons, brothers or nephews of the Sipahi, and their position was probably more similar to squires than men-at-arms. Sipahis, traditionally were recruited among landowners of Turkish origin. Provinces that did not have Turkish population, such as Arabian Peninsula or northwestern African group, did not have Sipahis. Recruitment of non-Turkish as Sipahi was banned in 1635 by a firman. In contrast to Janissaries, Timarlı Sipahis from that time onwards were Turks, Muslims. A rivalry between Janissaries, who controlled the central bureaucracy of the empire and had a lot of political influence, and Sipahis, who controlled the provincial bureaucracy and had the power of the army, prevented them from cooperating against the House of Osman. In wartime, Timarli Sipahis and their jebelis, retainers, were gathered under their alay regiment. Beys. Subsequently alay beys were gathered with their troops under sanjak, province, beys, and sanjak beys gathered under bilibs. If a battle was fought to be in Europe, Rumeli, Balkan, Sipahis took the honorary right flank of Ottoman army under Rumeli Bilibi, while Anatolian Bilibi with his Sipahis took the left flank. If battle was in Asia, positions were switched. This way, classical period Ottoman armies both flanks wholly consisted of timariot cavalry, while Janissary infantry and artillery divisions consisted armies center, Timarli Sipahis of Anatolia and Timarli Sipahis of Rumelia. The Ottoman Balkan provinces had employed different equipments and tactics. Timarli Sipahis of Anatolia equipped and fought as classic horse archer style. They could shoot arrows back and forth while galloping. Yet they weren't nomadic cavalry and their status was similar to medium cavalry class. Balkan Timarli Sipahis donned chain mail, rode barded horses and carried lances, though they also carried javelins as missile weapons to fend off chasing enemy cavalry, and fought as medium cavalry. Timarli Sipahis of classical Ottoman period usually comprised the majority of the army and did the majority of the fighting on the battlefield, while infantry troops of the army's center maintained a static battle line. The cavalry flanks constituted its mobile hitting arm. During the battle, Timarli Sipahi tactics were used, opening the conflict with skirmishes and localized contacts with enemy cavalry. Regiments of Timarli Sipahis made charges against weaker or isolated units and whenever confronted with heavy cavalry, retreated back to main body of troops. During one regiment's retreat, other regiments or Sipahis may have charged the chasing enemy's flanks. This way, they were trying to draw enemy cavalry away from infantry support, distort their cohesion, isolate and overwhelm them with numerical superiority. Anatolian Sipahis had the ability to harass and provoke opposing troops with arrow shots. More heavily equipped Balkan Sipahis were carried javelins for protection against closing enemy horsemen during their tactical retreats. This way, all cavalry flanks of Ottoman army fought a fluid, mounted warfare around center of the army which remained as a stable pivot. Classical Ottoman period standard equipment of Rumeli Sipahis was round shield, lance, sword, javelins and plated chain mail. Their horses were barded. Standard equipment of Anatolian Sipahis at same era was round shield, composite Turkish bow, arrows, keelage, Turkish sword, and leather or felt armor. Beside of those, Sipahis of both provinces equipped with bozdogan and sespa maces, and dogan, tebra and sagir axes. Anatolian Sipahis sometimes also carried lances. Kapıkulu Sipahis. Kapıkulu Sipahis, Sipahis of the Porte, were household cavalry troops of the Ottoman palace. They were the cavalry equivalent of Janissary household infantry force. There were 6 divisions of Kapıkulu Sipahis, the Sipahis, Silators, right Alufasis, left Alufasis, right Garips and left Garips. All of them were paid quarterly salaries. The Sipahis and Silators were elite units within the 6 divisions. Silators, which means weapon masters, were chosen from the best warriors in the Ottoman Empire. Any Ottoman soldier who committed a significant deed on the battlefield may have been promoted to the Silator division, although usually members of other mounted units, like Timarli Sipahis or other less prestigious 4 divisions of Kapıkulu Sipahis, were promoted this way. Infantry soldiers had to enlist as Serdan Gektai, literally means giver of his head, and survive suicide missions to join Silator division. If a Janissary ever became a Silator, other members of the division with cavalry backgrounds despised him and former comrade Janissaries considered him a traitor, but because the position and wealth of a Silator was so attractive, Janissaries and other soldiers still enlisted for suicide missions. The commander of the Silator division was the Silatoraga. He was the official weapons master of the palace and a close personal aide of the Sultan, helping him to don his armor. He was also a liaison officer who supervised the communication between the Sultan and the Grand Vizier. The Sipahi division was the most prestigious of the 6 divisions. Traditionally, sons of Ottoman elite, sons of Vezes, Pashas and Beys, served in this unit. The Sipahis and Silators were granted timar fiefs near Istanbul, alongside their salaries. Alufasi means salaried ones, and the members of two Alufasi divisions weren't granted timar fiefs. Garip means poor ones, because their equipment was lighter compared to the other four divisions, and were paid salaries. The 6 divisions of Sipahis represented the kapıkulu cavalry in the same way that the janissaries represented the kapıkulu infantry. Kapıkulu means servant of the Porte. Servants of the Porte, kapıkulari, were legally servants of the Ottoman throne. They weren't literally slaves, though their legal status was different from other Ottoman people. The Sultan had the power to directly command execution of his servants without any court verdict. Theoretically, the Sultan didn't have this kind of power over other people, even simple peasants. If a freeman was promoted to one of kapıkulu Sipahi divisions, he considered automatically switched to kul, servant, status. Equipment of Silata, Sipahi and Alufasi divisions was plated mail, chain mail, round shield, sword, composite bow, arrows, lance, bosdogan mace and axe. Their equipment was similar to Rumli, Balkan, provincial timarlı sipahis, though they wore brilliant fabrics, prominent hats and bore ornamented poems. The two Garip divisions were more lightly equipped. In the classical period Ottoman battle formation, kapıkulu sipahis were positioned back of the army as rearguards. They acted as reserve cavalry and bodyguards of Ottoman Sultan and Vezes. Their job included to join and reinforce Ottoman army's flanks, which otherwise consisted entirely provincial timariots sipahis. The Sipahis of the Porte, kapıkulu sipahis, were originally founded during the reign of Murad I. Although the Sipahis of the Porte were originally recruited, like the janissaries, using the defzerm system, by the time of Sultan Mehmed II, their ranks were only chosen from among the ethnic Turks who owned land within imperial borders. The Sipahi eventually became the largest of the 6 divisions of the Ottoman cavalry. The duties of the Sipahis included riding with the Sultan on parades and as a mounted bodyguard. Earlier times Silata division was accompanied Sultan on parades, though the Sipahi division took their place because sons of Ottoman aristocracy exclusively joined this regiment. Since kapıkulu Sipahis were a cavalry regiment, it was well known within the Ottoman military circles that they considered themselves a superior stock of soldiers than janissaries, who were sons of Christian peasants from the Balkans, Rumelia, and were basically slaves bounded by various laws of the defzerm. Whereas the Sipahis, both Mal and kapıkulu, were almost exclusively chosen amongst ethnic Turkic landowners, they made great strides of efforts to gain respect within the Ottoman Empire, and their political reputation depended on the mistakes of the janissary. That minor quarrels erupted between the two units is made evident with the Turkmen adage, still used today within Turkey, atlar baskılmaz, which, referring to the unruly janissaries, translates into horsemen don't mutiny. Towards the middle of the 16th century, the janissaries had started to gain more importance in the army, though the Sipahis remained an important factor in the empire's bureaucracy, economy and politics, and a crucial aspect of disciplined leadership within the army. As late as the 17th century, the Sipahis were, together with their rivals the janissaries, the de facto rulers in the early years of Sultan Murad IV's reign. In 1826, after an evident janissary revolt, the Sipahis played an important part in the disbandment of the janissary corps. The Sultan received critical assistance from the loyalist Sipahi cavalry in order to forcefully dismiss the infuriated janissaries. 2 years later, however, they shared a similar fate when Sultan Mehmed II revoked their privileges and dismissed them in favor of a more modern military structure. Unlike the janissaries before them, they retired honorably, peacefully, and without bloodshed into new Ottoman cavalry divisions who followed modern military tradition doctrines. Older Sipahis were allowed to retire and keep their marlands until they died, and younger Sipahis joined the Asake-i Manshuri Muhammadiyya army as cavalry.